Hello there and welcome back. In the previous episode we created this location service. So now this service runs in the background of our application even if the application is closed and there is no way to know there is a service running, and the service is getting the location of the device every few seconds. But right now we are only getting the location and we're printing it to our terminal. Okay? And there is no way to get this location from a different device because we're going to install this app on a device and then we're going to walk away. So we're not going to have access to that device anymore. And we do want to get this location remotely, right? So that's why we're going to use Firebase to store and upload this location to, and then we're going to be able to download this information to all other devices. So all of our devices with our app will share the locations. Okay, so on every map fragment, we're going to be able to see all the devices, all the locations. So to work with Firebase, we first need to implement the SDK inside our app exactly the same way we did with Google Maps. Okay, so we're going to go to Google and we're going to type Firebase. Then we're going to find this official link and we're going to click on it and just make sure you're connected with your Google account, and I'm going to switch it to another one and I'm going to click on Get Started. And I only have 2 projects over here. There is some kind of limitation, but you can simply create another Google account. So we're going to click on Add Project and we're going to give it the same name we gave to our application and the same name we gave to our Google Maps SDK, just because we want everything to be connected and we don't have to give it the same name, but it will be easier for us to remember. So we're going to call it the same way, okay? And we press on continue. Now we don't want any analytics, create project, and it will take a few seconds to create the project. Now that it's done, we're going to click on continue. And now we're going to see this console, so we can see the name of our app over here. So we know that we're inside this project, okay? And Firebase is more than just a database. It has a lot of different things that we can use it for. So first we need to connect this project, this Firebase project, to our Android Studio project, okay? So to do that, we're going to click over here on Android. So over here, we're going to have to provide it with a few details. So first of all, we're going to provide it with the package name, okay? So we can simply find it inside our project. And you can find it at the top of every class, just without the name of the package. Or the simplest way is go to the manifest and find it over here, okay? So we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it over here. Now we're going to give it a nickname. It's optional. Let's just give it a nickname. And we don't have to provide it with a SHA-1. It's just a way to make this project more secure and make sure that it only works with our app, but we don't care about it right now. So then we click on Register App. And there are a few more steps that we need to do. The next thing, we need to download this Google Services JSON file and paste it inside our application. So we're going to click on Download. And it's going to download this file. So all we need to do is go inside this folder and just copy this file. And then inside our project, we're going to click over here and we're going to change it to the project view, and we're going to open the first app and we're going to click on this app package and we're going to paste it. So it's going to ask us if that's the name we want to give it. We're going to click on OK. And then when we expand this app, we're going to see it inside and we can go back to the Android view, okay? So the Android view is not displaying all the files we have inside our project. That's why we do want to see that it got there, okay? Then when we are done with this step, we're going to click on Next, and it's going to ask us to bring all kinds of different dependencies like we did with Google Maps. So I'm going to show you all the dependencies that we need. And of course, I'm also going to provide them to you in the description section of this video. So then we can click on Next. And we're basically done. Of course, we're going to have to add these dependencies. And then we can click on Continue to Console. Okay, so now inside our project, we're going to click on Build Gradle, okay, the project one. And over here inside this build script, so we pasted this in the first episode, and this is one of the dependencies that we need, okay? Next, we're going to click on the Build Gradle module. And over here at the top, we're going to make some room and we're going to paste one plugin that we need. And then we're going to scroll down, and over here, we're going to add a few more dependencies. Okay, and now we're going to click on Sync Now. It's going to download all of these libraries. And before we continue, there's one thing that I want to show you. If we go to Tools and click on Firebase, it's going to open this Firebase Assistant. So over here, we can implement different functionalities of Firebase, but we're interested in the real-time database. Okay, so we're going to expand this and we're going to click on Save and Retrieve Data. And here it basically gives us different instructions about how to connect the app to Firebase. So we can see that all of the dependencies are set up because that's what we did. And we can also click here on Connect to Firebase. And it says that we are already connected to the secret app. Okay, so we already did this. So we can click on OK, and we can see both of these green V's. It means that everything is set up and everything will work. Now there's also all kinds of explanations how we use Firebase, but I'm going to explain it to you so you don't need to read all of this. Let's close this. Next, we're going to go back to the browser and we're going to click on Build Real-Time Database. And now we simply want to create a real-time database for our app, okay? So we're going to create database and we need to select a server, and it's best to select one that is closest to you. I am closest to Europe, so I'm going to select this one. You can select whatever you want. And then we're going to click on Next. And then it tells us that we need to select the rules. So rules are basically a way to secure our database. Okay, so sometimes we don't want people to write to the database or to read from it. So we're going to select Start in Locked Mode and we're going to click Enable. And now we can see that it created this database. Okay, this is the address of our database and we can see that there is nothing inside. Now we do want to write and read from the database, okay, because we're not going to keep any information over there that can risk us. There will be no credit card information. There will be the location, but again, no one will have access to this app except of us. So we're going to click on Rules over here and we're going to change it to True and True, okay? And then we're going to click on Publish. So it's going to tell us that these rules are not secured, but it's okay, we don't care, okay? So now everything should work and everything should be connected. And the next thing we want to do is really check that we can write and read from our database, okay? So we're going to go back into our project and we're going to set up some kind of testing environment, okay? So we're going to click on Layout and we're going to select the first fragment. We're going to go to Split. And inside, we're going to create two buttons. And then we're going to go over here to this component tree. So if this is not open, you simply need to select split or design. And we're going to go to this component tree. We're going to press on Shift and select both of these buttons. And then we're going to right click, add helpers, and we're going to select flow. And this is just a helper that helps us position different views inside our layout. Okay, so we're going to select flow. And we can see that both of these buttons are a part of this flow because the reference IDs are the IDs of our flow. So now we're going to change the orientation of the flow. We're going to change the chain style. And we're going to change. Okay, so this is just a way to position our buttons, nothing too fancy. It's just for testing, and later we're going to delete all of this. So now we're going to close this fragment layout. We're going to close this. The next thing we want to do is create one of the most important classes in this project, and that will be the Firebase Manager. So with this class, we're going to control all the operations with Firebase. Okay, so we're going to click on utils, and it's actually not a util. Let's go to data, and over here we're going to click and select new Kotlin file, and we're going to call it Firebase Manager. So I don't want to type this entire class. I already created it, and I'm going to provide it to you with a link. So all you need to do is copy the content of the link and just paste it over here. Okay, so there are a few things we need to import, and we can import this Firebase database because we have all the dependencies. So import, and these ones import. So I'm going to go line by line and explain to you what is going on, because I do want you to learn things and not only copy and paste. So if you ever want to use Firebase with another app, you will know what to do and how to use Firebase. So this is simply a class that will manage the different methods that are related to Firebase. Of course, later, when we're going to implement dependency injection, we're going to inject this class as an instance into our app. But right now, we're simply going to reference it locally. So first of all, we have a reference to the database, and we pass in the name of the database. Okay, so over here we have a constant, the name of the database, and this is the link that I showed you before. This is the address of our database. So all you need to do is go into the console, into your real-time database, and just press on copy reference URL. And then we're going to replace this thing over here. Okay, so now it will create this connection to your database. This part is not required if you use the US server, okay? But even if you use the US server, you can still do this part and it will work, okay? I just want to let you know that if you're going to see that in other projects people are not doing this, is because you only have to do it with the Europe server and with the Singapore server, okay? But if you're going to do it with the US server, it will still work. So now we pass in this database name into this get instance, and we simply get an instance of our database, okay? And then we can use this instance over here. Then we have a few different methods that do different things. And we can see that this one writes a new user, this one updates the data, and this one reads the data, okay? And then we simply have a class, a user class, and this is for testing right now, okay? We just want to see that we can actually write an object into our database. So we have three different properties. We have user ID that will be generated by itself, okay? So this is an automatic way to create an ID. Then we have a username and a location, okay? So this is just for testing. We want to insert this user into the database. So the first method is write new user. We'll simply receive a user, okay? And then we have this database reference. We search for a child called users, and if this child is still not created, like right now, it's going to create this child, okay? And then it's going to look for a child with the user ID of our user. And again, if this child is still not created, it's going to create this child. And then it's going to set the values of our user. So it's going to set this object, and inside we're going to find username and location. Okay? So it's going to create a user's child, then it's going to create an ID of our user inside this users, and inside of this ID it's going to create our user, and you're going to see it visually inside Firebase. And then we add a non-success listener, so we simply want to know if this operation was successful. So if this operation was successful, it's going to print new user added, and if there's going to be a failure and something went wrong, it's going to print failed to add new user. But of course, we're going to see it in real time, okay, when we do this. Then we'll also have this update data. We're not going to use it right now, but we're going to use it later to update the location, right? Because every 10 seconds, we're going to get new location. So we don't want to add more and more locations. We want to replace the location that we have inside our app. We want to know where is the user, where is the target right now. Of course, we can also add this possibility for like a history location where the device was in the last day or in the last week, and we can save new locations. But right now we're simply going to update the location, so there will only be one location in the database, the last location. So over here, we simply receive the user ID that we want to change, that we want to update, the property that we want to update, and the new value that we want to put inside this property. So if we pass in username, and then we pass in Mike, then it's going to update the name to be Mike. And inside, again, we have a reference. We get this user's child that we created over here. Then we find this ID, and inside we're going to find this property. So we're going to find username inside this child, and we're going to set the new value. And again, we also have these success listeners and failure listeners. Then the next one is read data. So we want to get the information from the database. So here we simply search for a child called users inside our reference, and we place an event listener on it. So an event listener is some kind of callback that is triggered each time there is a change inside this child. So if we write or update or delete something inside users, it's going to call this callback, and we're going to get the new data, okay? We decide what data to receive, and we decide what to do with this data, but this method will get triggered each time there is some kind of change inside users. So then we can listen to this method, and each time there will be some kind of change, we're going to get notified, okay? So when there is some kind of change, we're going to run some code. And the code will be, we're going to create a list of users, and we're going to get the children from this data snapshot. And the data snapshot is just some kind of state our database is at this moment. So think about it as when there was some kind of change in the database, someone took a picture of the database, and then we get this picture over here, okay? And of course, it's not a picture, but it's just the way the database looked when this change occurred, okay? So we get this snapshot, and we look for the children. And because we place this listener on the users, it means that the children of users is all of the IDs, right? Because this is the child of users. So all these IDs will be the children of users. So we're simply going to get all of these different IDs and we're going to map them. So map means that we're going to do something with each child and we're going to save it inside this list. So we're going to return a list inside this list. This is what map means. But map not null means if one of these childs is null, okay, there is no information, we're simply going to ignore him. So this is map not null. So we simply get it, and it is the child, okay? So we get the value of each child, and the value is basically a user class, right? Because we inserted a user class as a child. And we transform everything to become a list, and all of this goes into this users list. After we do this, we basically get all the different users inside our database. We go over all of these users with a for each, okay? And we print the user ID, the username, and the location of each user. So it, user ID, it, username, and it, location. We can also do it like that, so it will be more readable, user, and then we're going to change it to user. So it will be easier to understand what is going on. So at this point, we simply want to test that our database is connected. So we're simply going to print this information. And of course, if we're still not creating a user, it will simply find nulls and it will not print anything. And there is also a callback for uncancelled. So if there was some kind of error, okay, it's going to run this method so we can put some kind of code inside. Okay, so we can do something like print line. And of course, it's better to use with logs, but I like to use this println. There was some error reading the data, okay? And that's all. This is this entire Firebase Manager class, and this is what we do inside. Later, we're going to change a few things because when we get the data, we want to display it on the map. We don't want to simply print it, but at this point, we just want to test everything. So now that you understand what this Firebase Manager does, we can start using it, okay? So we're going to click on first fragment, and this is where we created these buttons, right, for testing in the first fragment. So over here at the top, we're going to create an instance of this Firebase Manager. Then inside this onCreate view, we're going to create a method that will contain all of the click listeners on click listener. And it's simply a method that is going to contain the onClicks. And over here, we're going to create both of these onClicks. Button read, set onClick listener, and it's going to run a method called read from DB. And then we also go to binding, button write, set onClick listener, write to DB, okay? And these two methods are going to be created over here. So inside read from DB, we're going to reference our Firebase Manager instance, and we're going to call this read data method that we have inside, right? Read data. And over here, we're going to call the Firebase manager again, and we're going to write new user, but we need to provide it with a user. So we're going to create a new user with a constructor, and we're going to pass in a name and the location. So the location will be some kind of string just for testing. So let's import this user class. So we created a user and we passed the username and oh yeah, we also need to provide with the user ID. Let's change this for a second. Because it expects for a user ID and then a username and a location, it thinks that the name is the user ID, but we don't want to provide it with a user ID. We want it to be created automatically, okay? So we can do something like that. We can specify that this will be the username and this will be the location, okay? And then it knows that this is the username, this is the location, and the user ID will be created by itself, okay? So now that we have both of these methods over here, we pass in a user, and over here we read the data, and we simply reference this Firebase manager, and we call these methods. So when we click on these buttons, right? When we click on this write to database, it's going to write to database the new user, and when we read from database, it's going to read from database, okay? It's going to run this method. This method will run Firebase manager, and inside it's going to run read data, okay? So read data will get all the users, and write new user will insert this new user that we created. So now we're going to run the app, and we're going to write and read to the database, and we're going to see how it happens in real time, okay? So let's run the app. So now we're going to see when we click on this write to database, it should create this user over here, and we're going to see it in real time. We're going to click on write to database, and you see that this user's child was created. And then when we click on this arrow, inside we have this user ID that was automatically created, and inside we find our user class. So we have the location, we have the name, and we have the same user ID, because here we simply used this user ID, and here it's a part of the class, okay? So if we close this and we look over here, we created a child called users. So this is the child. Then inside this child, we created the user ID. So we created this user ID of this user, right? And then inside we set this user. And each time we're going to create a new user, it's going to create another new unique user ID. And if I'm going to click on this button right now, it's going to create another mic, right, with the same location. The user ID will be different. So let's see, write to database. And we can see that in real time, it created another unique user ID. And inside we have the same mic and the same location, but the user ID is different. So what we are going to do is save a location over here, and the location will be under some kind of device. So we're going to save, let's say, the model of the device. So if you install this app on a Samsung Galaxy, then you're going to see some kind of Samsung Galaxy model over here, the name of it, and inside you're going to find a location. And then maybe you install this app on another Android device, so you're going to see the model name over here, and you're going to see the location over here. So you're going to see all the devices that this app is installed on, okay? And when the location changes, it's not going to add another location, it's simply going to replace this location with the new location. Okay? And we have both of these users over here. So we can go to our terminal and we can also see that the location is working in the background. So let's clear this. And when we click on read from database, it should read both of these users. So you can see it got this user ID, it got the name, and it got the location. And then it got the second user ID, the name and the location. So we can see that writing and reading from the database works. And if this is happening to you, it means that you set up Firebase correctly. And right now we want to delete this information because it's useless, it's just for testing. So you can delete these properties by clicking on this trash can, or you can delete this entire user by clicking on this trash can, or you can simply delete everything by clicking on this trash can, okay? So we're going to click here, we're going to delete, and then everything is deleted. So it's really nice that we can do changes and we can test things and we can then see the changes happen over here. And when you're going to have this app installed on other devices, you're going to get the location over here and it's going to be updated in front of your eyes. Then, of course, we're going to read this data like we did over here, and we're going to show it on the map. So we're going to take the coordinates and we're going to make a marker out of them, right? The same way we did over here with Sydney. We're going to take these coordinates and we're going to place them inside this lat_lang object, and we're going to make a marker out of these coordinates. So if you have 3 different devices over here, you're going to see 3 different markers on the map, and they're going to get updated in real time. So if a person is driving the car, you will actually see this marker moving every 10 seconds, okay? Because we set it to be 10 seconds. So that's all for this episode. We just wanted to set up Firebase, and in the next episode, we're actually going to start sending the location to Firebase. We're going to save it as an object, a location object, and then we're also going to read it from database and we're going to display it on the map. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like, please subscribe, it will help me a lot, and see you next time.